Can we kick off the show and just get to the news quickly? Costin, you were very, very excited this week to see a Salt Typhoon report from the NSA and every other agency in the world. Tons of logos everywhere talking about overlapping. We actually got multiple naming schemes, indicators of compromise, IOCs, all kinds of YARA rules. Give
Shit
me
got real.
is this Christmas morning for you?
No, like, look, I've been critical of this case in the past. Remember, I called it like the biggest intelligence failure. I said, like, look, this probably must be some utter failure, because if this was something serious or big, we would have reports, we would have outrage, we would have indicators of compromise. So we have all sorts of things, and we had nothing, basically, officially at least. So now that this report drops, and there's basically, as you were saying, pretty much every agency in the world. And I was thinking that if you are not in this list, then probably you need to work harder. That's the only explanation, because I have no other. I mean, yeah, that's basically everybody that matters a lot. So now I'm happy with the report, obviously, because it has IP addresses, it has YARA rules, it has like some hashes, it has like detailed description, including what's new and things that have never been said before about this. But I wonder like about two things here. One, I feel that this is a kind of report that was available for over a year and was being shared in some circles extensively. Like finally now it's being made public. So my first question is, why so late? And two, again, this is a kind of report which is quite, I think it's nice, but this is a kind of report that takes any serious company, competent company, like let's say Mandiant or whoever, it takes about 2-3 weeks to write.
Ah,
So
so
if it
you're
takes
critical.
2-3 weeks
Critical
to
that
write, why so late?
because you
Is
have
it because
25 logos have to approve
Yeah,
and
each one of
review.
those motherfuckers have a
so
lawyer and like a
that's an
policy
issue? That's
department.
an
Yeah.
issue because like this, technically, it takes 2-3 weeks to write by a competent security company. And if this took 1 year to approve and 3 weeks to write, then we have a problem on the approval side of things.
It absolutely did. Let me start there. Like, it absolutely did take that, a shit ton to wait. I don't know anything about the approval process, but I can tell you that it didn't take that long to write. I would also suggest, knowing very little, that this was primarily the content of two analysts I can probably name that started making the rounds, and they're private sector analysts. And somehow it all fucking rolls down the mountain collecting logos and becomes a giant ball of logos. But I'm not entirely certain that this is that much more content than what those original private sector analysts provided. So, like, I really don't want us to, like, I don't
This
know.
is a big thing that we should be applauding, though, even though it's late, even though it should have been.
Absolutely.
I mean, like,
That,
this is what
yeah,
we've been
that's
screaming
why.
for.
That's why I'm hedging my bets, because I think there's, like I've said it before in the podcast. I think it's fucked up when we ask for something over and over, and then somebody finally delivers it at great pain, and then we go, well, this is shit, like, and fuck you, and like whatever. You're like, so that's really not. It's not. I don't want to do that. I know some people must have worked really hard just to get it through the approvals process in the first place. I do think that a lot of things with this Salt Typhoon thingy went pretty wrong. I'm also curious to what extent, like, that ball of logos, which it's cool from a policy side, it's cool from like a unified standpoint kind of way, and I'm sure it signals something to China that isn't really meant for us, but rather to say, like, you have a fucking coalition of like 20 countries that are pissed about this thing, right? At the same time, how much did any of those logos really contribute to this release beyond the cosmetics of it? And, what is the real import of putting these things out there? Is it signaling to the Chinese, or is it defending people? Because if it's defending people, like, I don't know that I need that many logos. Hell, I may not need any logos. If you could send this from an official NSA address, like, or share it within like a month or post it on a website in a year or whatever, but with a bunch of logos, I think the former seems like the more desirable one.
Putting aside the logos and the bureaucracy and all that giant mess, Costin, this is something that you could use for what? I mean, like as a defender, let's just say for defensive purposes, what are you grabbing this report? Where are you focused and what are you using it for? I mean, what's the value of it to a threat hunter like you?
Well, I want to outline maybe two important kind of new things that I spotted in this report that maybe they haven't been publicized before. So one of them, which I thought it was quite interesting, is they discuss the ability of these threat actors to extensively use containers on Cisco routers in order to run Linux environments, and in those Linux environments to run typical tools, including like Python, Golang, binaries, and so on, which you wouldn't expect, right, on this Cisco infrastructure, like the 9000 series routers, which support this functionality. To me, that was like a very ingenious and interesting, and I don't think that I have seen it before. So that immediately attracted the attention. I'm speaking about these guest shells, which is a functionality of some Cisco routers that allow you to run Linux containers on these devices. So the fact that the attackers leverage this also offers some advantage, which is they escape some of the traditional logging functionality of this platform. So they make it a bit more difficult to detect. In terms of catching them, I would say that you need to monitor for the creation of these guest shells. So whenever someone is trying to create one, basically you need to spot that activity. To be honest, I don't know how popular these guest shells are, so it'd be very interesting to know if people actually use them for something. The other kind of things that they were doing, in my opinion, they're not that different from what Moonlight Maze was doing like 20 years ago. Like if you look, what are they doing? Like PCAPs. What are they using the PCAPs to intercept credentials? What are they doing with the credentials? Accessing other devices. So it has like this Moonlight Maze feeling of hardcore hackers that essentially they know how to hack the networks and leverage typical Linux tools and Linux functionality with a focus on compromising routers, tunneling traffic, capturing traffic from GSM and telecommunication networks, and tunneling that back into their infrastructure in China. So I thought it was interesting. The other thing that I was thinking is interesting are these YARA rules they provided. There's 2 YARA rules, and they talk about 4 custom tools. And to me, this is important because remember previously when we were talking about Salt Typhoon, it was like, there's no IOCs, there's no possibility to share anything because these guys, they're not using any custom tools. So what do you know? They're actually using some custom tools. And there are in particular 4 tools which are being described in this report, 4 custom tools and 2 YARA rules for them. There's this CMD1, CMD3, NU2, and SFT or something like this, or FLT, which is the other one, which in SFT exactly, which are interesting. Unfortunately, only one of them is on VirusTotal, and the YARA rules, unfortunately, they don't bring anything new yet. But again, this is like a string. I call it a string, right? So the moment that you grab of this string and then you start pulling, in time you'll find more, and from there you'll pivot, like PDB paths, for instance. They'll bring more tools, and this way people can try to find more custom and related activity to these threat actors, as opposed to nobody has any idea about what's going on, and there's no sharing, and there's no useful information. Suddenly, actually, this is a proof that there was actually information that could be shared, and there's useful YARA rules and hashes and IP addresses which are associated with these guys. One
So
more
you
thing.
found them useful? Like
To
just
me-
to
Do you
To
find
me,
this list?
yeah.
I'm sharing a screen on the list, a list on the screen here. Do you find this particularly
This,
useful?
no.
Just identifying these CVEs and the kind of products that are being popped for
To
initial
me-
accesses. Can you go down to the source there and do some mitigation there?
like these are not so useful to me. Like knowing that this is how they getting through these CVEs, including like a 2018 CVEs. But essentially Ivanti, Cisco, Palo Alto. This is what we were talking about.
These are the network security things we've been talking about for the last year, right?
These are useful for defenders. I agree that they're not so useful for threat hunters like myself. And it's good that this report is tailoring both to threat hunters and defenders, because like many reports are either going one way or the other, which is incomplete or wrong in my opinion. So it's good that it kind of tries to cover both. I'm happy with that. If you ask me, I'm happy. I took the YARA rules, I put them in all my systems. I took the IP addresses, I put them in all my systems. I check like all sorts of network traffic, again, trying to develop custom signatures, trying to hunt for more. So this is good. Like this is good stuff. There's one thing which attracted my attention, and I think it's worth mentioning here, which I don't know if you guys have seen it as well, but I smiled when I saw it. And it says this activity partly or partially overlaps with cyber threat actor reporting by the cybersecurity industry, commonly referred to as Salt Typhoon, Operator Panda, Red Mike, UNC 5807, and Ghost Emperor, among others. And now the best part, the authoring agencies are not adopting a particular commercial naming convention and hereafter refer to those responsible for the cyber threat activity more generically as advanced persistent threat parenthesis APT actors throughout this advisory. So this is something that hurts a bit to read, in my opinion. I tell you why. Because like later when you want to refer to this, how are you gonna refer to it? As the advanced persistent threat actors report? Like there's thousands of advanced persistent threat actor reports. So it would have been nice if they just gave it like some random name.
That you wanted them to add another.
Yeah, I wanted them to add another one, like Byzantine salt or whatever, right? I don't know what's the code name for that, but I would have preferred if this report actually had some kind of a title or unique name specific to this that you can refer to. Otherwise, you can't refer to Advanced Persistent Threat Actors report. Yeah.
Well, so everyone's going to call it the Salt Typhoon report regardless.
Fair enough.
But what I think is interesting is like this is not a common. I don't think I've ever seen like that language in any advisory before, and so I don't think this has anything to do with them not throwing a name in the ring. I think this has to do. To me, this signals that even that pile of logos does not have an easy time saying this is Salt Typhoon. Like these are the hard boundaries of Salt Typhoon, and this is not Salt Typhoon, right? Like, and that's the problem we've been talking about with Salt Typhoon. Like even when I saw the term Ghost Emperor in there, I'm like, right, like I know because I know enough of the drama with like people have published on Ghost Emperor and been told no, like sort of, kind of, but not really. Also note that this doesn't include the Trend Micro name. It doesn't include
Earth
Estries. It does not include the who were the other guys who published on this? It was Trend Micro.
Palo Alto, right?
No.
Palo Alto published as well.
No, I mean Palo Alto and Talos and everybody tried to publish on stuff. And I'm not saying that the Palo Alto one was bad or particular, but like we
didn't get any good one. There wasn't any good detailed one.
I think more importantly, there were reports from good companies that looked like good reports, but the complaint, the immediate disavowal was, you're close, but that's not Salt. And then like for the other thing, you know, you're like, oh, we looked at Ghost Emperor, or like the demo decks for kid and whatever, and they go sort of, but that's not really fully Salt, or like that's a part of Salt, or like that's a component that Salt used, but that wasn't Salt that used it when you saw it. It was Salt that used it back over here. So like, and that's why I don't, you know, we didn't really adopt the nomenclature of anybody else. And every time we talked about Trend's report or somebody else's report, I was kind of back channeling and being like, yo, people who actually, the 3 people on Earth that I think I'm going to say the 6 people in the industry who know what the fuck they're talking about with these things, like full on. They're the only people. You go to them and you go, sir, ma'am, is this salt? And they go, a little salt, but not fully salt. And you go, okay, not this one. And then you bring another one. You go, is this salt? And they go, this one was close to salt, but it's not salt. And you just kind of. So I honestly, if I'm looking forward to anything, it's I'm hoping Dakota will get inspired to like after the companies, because the most concrete thing in that report as far as who these guys are is not the APT naming, it's the fact that they mention actual companies in China. And, as we saw from Dakota's Hafnium post recently, you can dig a fair amount of interesting shit if you understand how that ecosystem works. So that's the part I'm actually more excited for in as far as like how we clump and designate and express the boundaries of what Salt Typhoon is.
Good segue. I have it up on the screen here. You're referencing 3 Chinese companies that this multi-logoed report is claiming are providing cyber-related products and services to China's intelligence services, including multiple units in the PLA, MSS. The data stolen through this activity against foreign communications, as well as intrusions and so on, can provide Chinese intelligence services with the capability to identify and defend. This fits into kind of what we've been talking about with Dakota and on the last episode as well, around the margin research, people talking about the use of militias. And like in some cases, these guys may not be able to help themselves. Costin, what do you take away from these named Chinese companies? I'm not going to try to name them because I always butcher it. I always butcher the pronunciations, but what is the relevance here?
You can always pronounce them like with the Romanian accent, right?
I know, you're lucky that you have a Romanian accent.
Sichuan Juxinhe Network Technologico.
There you go.
There you go.
Painful.
And, like, it will be broken anyway, right? It won't be the
one of these companies have already been sanctioned, by the way. I should add, I believe the first one, the Sichuan Jush, I'm not going to try. I've been sanctioned already. The point is, this is early signaling that possible sanctions might be coming down the pike for all of these folks. And then we've started to see actual individuals getting indicted. So like it feels like things are moving a lot stronger on is this what we're talking about defending forward?
First of all, what worries me here is that they say something around the lines, these operations have been linked to multiple China-based entities, including at least these 3 companies. So this sounds very worrying to me from several points of view. One, the fact that we are thinking or saying that one threat actor is linked to 3 companies becomes a bit messy, in my humble opinion. And it's at least 3 companies, maybe more. When you get 3 or more companies to work on the same project and you still call them Salt Typhoon, I fear that the Salt Typhoon umbrella has become a bit too wide for a kind of thing or a big pile mass of different activities from different companies that shouldn't actually be in the same umbrella anymore. So maybe this is why people are staying away from calling it just one way or another. My fear is that we will never be able to specifically use any single actor name for all these big mass of connected and possibly overlapping activities from at least 3 different companies, potentially more. That's why I'm thinking it was better if the NSA or whoever was giving them a different name, and let's just leave Salt Typhoon behind, move past that mess and move into something better, for which again we have some IOCs, we have some tools, and at least we can talk about this report now publicly and link to it and refer to it, as opposed to linking to Salt Typhoon, for which, again, there's no IOCs, there's
news
no
article.
report, there's nothing,
it used
only
to be
news
just Washington Post articles, yeah.
Exactly. So this is like what worries me a bit, that is at least 3 companies, maybe more. It's very hard to pile all that under one umbrella in practice. So yeah, maybe let's move past that.
I share your apprehension about what this is saying about Salt. I think my suspicion is that the problem is different. Show us that cap. Show where is it? Oh, look at that European ass water bottle.
Not only that, but when you put it back, you can't. You need to pull it up and kind of. Yeah, and sometimes
you guys couldn't
catch
get the
like your
Germans to
skin.
design the caps.
Your
Like you have the
skin.
Germans right there.
You accidentally catch your skin. It's super painful. Like
This is
I don't
painful. Sorry. Okay. So I think the issue with Salt in this case, like I share what you're concerned about. I'm concerned about it too. I think that normally this would be a sign of the activity might be too wide for the bucket. However, in this case, I don't think that's what's happening. In this case, I'm afraid that this is the third one of these that we've seen from the Chinese in how they've played out publicly. And so I would say the original Hafnium report had no clear sense of what the original actor, never got clarity of what the original actor was. Greatest clarity we ever got on them was 4 years later or something. We hear the names of the companies and the individuals involved, but we don't get a clear demarcation of Hafnium begins here and ends here from a technical side. Salt Typhoon happens. We get a news story, we get a lot of complaining, we get a lot of people talking about it. We never get a sense of what Salt Typhoon is beginning to end, any clear sense of whatever. I think there may have been some company stuff at some point. Then Salt Typhoon happens. You don't get any, moreover, not only do you not get a clear sense of demarcation, you get a lot of people talking, a lot of random reports, and the demarcation of the, having the right view of the thing eludes all of these different places. And there's contention to the point where even a 30 logo advisory from every intelligence agency on the planet is disavowing, instead of saying, out of all of these, we like this one makes the most sense to us or whatever. They basically throw their hands up and go, we're not really adopting any of these. To me, that's not us not doing a good job. To me, that's not the standard of reporting going down. To me, that's not the analysts are like playing it too fast and loose and the activity is too big. To me, this is the adversary has figured out a way to play to their strengths and, more importantly, to our weaknesses. And it is eluding our ability to properly characterize the activity in the first place. Like, it's not that the thing is not happening. It's that as much as we are seeing of it is murky enough, wispy enough, ephemeral enough that we're uncomfortable making concrete intelligence assessments about it, at least on the technical side. And I think that that's an insane accomplishment. I think that that's not something that's just happening. That's something the adversary is pulling off. And it's at least the third one of these where they're pulling it off. And we should be having a different conversation rather than just saying, oh, APT's going to APT, China going to China. And you go, China-ing different, China-ing better than the rest of us in some interesting ways. At least, I won't say better than the other threat actors, but I'm saying at least they're besting the CTI community. They're besting the IC's CTI capabilities. So we need to all sit back and have like a serious come to Jesus conversation about like, yo, the math ain't mathing anymore, and we might need to like, what are we going to do about it?
I want to flag here that our friends at the Dutch intelligence agency, MIVD, also said that the Dutch telco providers were targeted by Salt Typhoon. In fact, some smaller ones were. This is a Google translation, so I'm not vouching for the total accuracy of it. It said it didn't receive the same level of attention that those in the US, but did observe targets. They were not large telcos, but smaller internet service and hosting providers. Is this targeted, or was this just kind of like a sweep and spray to see which one of those devices were in? What do you think the Dutch is trying to signal here? Because their logo is probably in that one as well, but they're probably flagging something else here. Why did they put out this statement?
I don't know why. I wouldn't be surprised if this is, if their logo is in the other one. I wouldn't be surprised if this has something to do with their remit to defend the Netherlands, for example. I don't know, right? I don't know how the politics work, but I think it's cool that they said it, and if they just said it because they wanted to say it, I think that's great. Like, hey, yeah, we saw some shit here, not a whole lot, but some. You're like, okay, that's a data point, thank you. But I'm also curious if like the politicking involves that they operate on the basis of defending the Netherlands, and that entails saying, hey, yeah, some of it was here. What I will say that's interesting to me is I'm curious when you're hitting these things, these telcos, right? Like, and what we heard about in the US was not exclusively telcos, but was heavily telco based, if I remember correctly. Um, how much of the magic that we're missing here and how much of what they're doing is coming by virtue of access to the telcos themselves, right? Like, if you remember Cloud Hopper back in the day, like the insane innovation of, I believe it was APT31. Please don't throw rocks at me, but the insane innovation of Cloud Hopper was the realization by PwC BAE that the this Chinese APT was hacking MSSPs directly and then using those MSSPs to traverse downstream customers. So you weren't seeing them on the wire. You weren't really seeing, like, you had a much harder time realizing like what was happening because they were riding the access of an upstream maintainer. When you tell me that these people are going at telcos, the part of me that doesn't understand how ISPs work and doesn't understand how backbone routers work, because I'm not good at network at all. I defer entirely to Mac for these things. I just, Donald McCarthy is my knowledge of networks. But when I don't understand, since I don't understand these things, I'm wondering, how much do you get by virtue of riding on top of an ISP? Like, when I'm saying, like, when you have access to those sorts of, assuming they get access to, say, backbone routers and whatnot, what magic can be unlocked, is being unlocked? They may not be using it this way, but like, how much are we missing here, right? If I can hack Google, which obviously is a tall order, and ride on the dark fiber that Google's networks uses and just pop out of a data center on the other side of the planet and do my attacks, I think that's a pretty God mode-y way of doing what you do. How much of that is also a factor when you pop ISPs?
Yeah.
And that's an open question. I have no fucking clue, but I'm curious.
Costin?
I think it's interesting that the IVD and MIVD were saying that the hackers didn't pivot further into those ISPs. And I think a lot of these operations, they have a very, very, time-dependent focus. So these companies, they do go around, they hack everything that is possible. So whenever, let's say, they get lucky and they manage to exploit one of these vulnerabilities, they achieve some kind of persistence or access, and they don't do anything further there unless they have a specific query about that country or about something that needs to be stolen or taken from that particular country. So I think that this is like what's kind of characterizes these operations, in the sense that they are very closely aligned with whatever targets Chinese intelligence has at those points. So obviously, the vast majority of this activity appears to have been happening in the United States around the presidential elections, right? Remember, they targeted J.D. Vance, they targeted all sorts of important people in the government. So I think that was their time-based focus, which explains the targeting of the United States. Now, the fact that they deployed and achieved persistence all over the world is very worrying, in my opinion. So you need to go around and find wherever they got access. And I think that this is quite tricky, because even if you patch some of these vulnerabilities, if they deployed persistence, be it either in a guest shell or like some other means of persistence, it will still be there if you patch it. So I would urge, obviously, all telcos, ISPs in pretty much any country to look for this kind of signs, to try to identify if they had any kind of activity and logs related to, however we want to call it, Salt Typhoon or whatever, and try to go back at least 2 years, because a lot of people, whenever they get a report like this, they just try to scout now for communication with those IP addresses, and they find nothing typically, because there's nothing to be found anymore. The persistence and the remote access capabilities have been moved to other means a long time ago.